But the goalpost for Caitlin continues to move. It's like the better she does, the further they move their expectations or what she would need to do.
Can you believe it? The rookie prodigy Caitlin Clark, who has been dominating the WNBA, was recently passed over for MVP, but things get much stranger. Rachel Dida is going to blow the lid off this entire situation because she can't stand it any longer.
Because at this point, it would once again just be a hit on her. It would just be keeping her out so that we didn't praise the golden child too much.
You won't want to miss her thoughts on the NBA's final decision.
The WNBA just released their 2024 MVP ladder. A'ja Wilson 1, Napheesa Collier 2, Sabrina Ionescu 3, Breanna Stewart 4, Alyssa Thomas 5, and honorable mentions, Caitlin Clark.
Let's take a moment to discuss Clark. She has been dominating, averaging over 25 points per game since the All-Star break, and what's more, she has the Indiana Fever sitting pretty with a 14-6 record. Why isn't she mentioned in the MVP discussion?
Caitlin Clark. I think she should be up for MVP. Rookie of the Year, foregone conclusion.
Because I claimed that Caitlin Clark should be in this MVP conversation.
Rachel Dida is refusing to back down from her stance against the WNBA's ruling. You'll want to hear Dida's strong thoughts about why Clark should be on that ladder, I promise.
Like, you cannot even have any kind of constructive conversation around MVP unless you preface it by saying, well, I already know that A'ja Wilson won. Like, that's the standard. If you talk about this conversation, which I think is a little weird, I feel like we should be able to just talk about it.
However, this is where things start to become fascinating. Rachel is going to show us why the WNBA may have just made a major error. The statistics are in, and they're presenting a picture that will cause you to reevaluate everything you believe to be true about the MVP race. How does Caitlin Clark actually compare to the so-called frontrunners? The answer may surprise you.
But I think MVP. Now, I'm going to look at this the way I did with Michael Jordan. Now, she's not the Michael Jordan of her sport as far as athleticism, playing, dominating. But A'ja Wilson is the best player in the game. Not even a debate. But I'm talking about value now. Value to a franchise, value to a league, getting your team in the playoffs. They had the #1 pick. They were the worst team last year. And there is value that I can attach to that. Now, that might not fit in the categories that everybody would consider for MVP. I'm talking about value. Michael Jordan was the most valuable player every single year because of what he meant to his team and what he meant to the league. And oh, by the way, winning 6 titles. Can't argue with that. Caitlin Clark may not win titles. Las Vegas is still a great team. But the fact that she is doing what she's doing and at a very high level, it's now commonplace where she'll go for 26 and 12.
Let's dissect it. Clark is exceptional. She's leading the WNBA in points generated, which includes both points scored and points she's accountable for through assists. She's a dual threat who isn't just filling out the stat sheet, she's rewriting it.
The fact that she is doing what she's doing and at a very high level, it's now commonplace where she'll go for 26 and 12. I mean, those are great numbers for any player, no matter how long you've been in the league. She's learned how to play the game, and she said, I had to learn how to play the WNBA way.
However, when you contrast Clark with the other MVP contenders, you'll understand why Rachel DEA is so enraged. Clark is providing more assists, grabbing more steals, and making more three-pointers per game than a number of players who are rated higher on the MVP ladder. How is that even possible?
At number 5 should not be Alyssa Thomas. Getting to the honorable mention, they have Caitlin Clark, and this is what they had to say about Caitlin Clark. While the Fever underwent understandable woes in the first month of the season, Indiana is 14-6 over their last 20 games, including 2 massive wins coming out of the All-Star break. Clark has found a synergy with her teammates and elite comfort on the floor as a facilitator and creator. She's knocking on the door of first-team All-W and top 5 finish in MVP voting. I don't think she's knocking on the floor of first team. I think she's in there, and I'm gonna go out on a limb right here and say that she is top 3.
Now, you might be thinking, well, but she's just a rookie, right? Well, let me blow your mind. Remember Candace Parker's legendary rookie season in 2008? Well, guess what? Clark is surpassing Parker in key stats like assists and steals, and Parker was averaging 18.5 points per game that year. Why isn't Clark hired on the MVP ladder? That's the big question, and Rachel Dida is furious because she didn't hold back when she said that if Caitlin Clark isn't on the ballot, it would just be keeping her out so that we don't praise the golden child too much.
My top three: A'ja Wilson, Caitlin Clark, and Nafisa Collier. If we look at their stats, A'ja wipes the floor with both of them. The only categories that she doesn't have are assists, three-point percentage, and free throw percentage. Caitlin has all of those.
Consider it. Although players like Alexandra Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, and Alyssa Thomas are higher on the MVP ladder, do their stats actually surpass Clark's? The figures don't seem to match up, leaving both fans and experts perplexed and wondering what's actually happening behind the scenes.
She is tied for steals with Nafisa. And if you watch A'ja play, you can see how she dominates the game. Like, she's an incredible player. I don't think that I have to beat that point into your heads. You guys get it. If you watch A'ja play, she's a great basketball player. Is she a better player overall right now than Caitlin Clark and Nafisa Collier? Yes. Is she a more valuable player to her team than Caitlin Clark and Nafisa Collier? That is where I'm not sure. And that's where we can start to have this conversation.
Is there another factor at work here? Regardless of the cause, it is evident that the NBA's evaluation standards are causing some significant concern. Wait before you start doing the maths. There is something you should know about the actual selection process for MVPs. Even specialists cannot agree on this method, but Rachel Dida offers some insights that will cause you to reevaluate every aspect of the WNBA's decision-making process.
The MVP award is subjective. It's very hard to just go by numbers and hand out this award. We saw it this season with the NBA MVP award when the Joker won it again 3 years in a row, and Shaq came out and said, "I respect your game. However, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should have won the award."
I'm not happy with this one. Congratulations to Joker, you are the best big man in the league, but based on everybody's criteria, my criteria, stat stuffer, you guys' criteria, number one seed, which team has a better record, I felt Shai Alexander deserved it.
You may wonder why Clark isn't higher on the MVP ladder given her impressive achievements, but that's where things get tricky. First, let's discuss what MVP actually means. Is it just about the numbers? Rachel Dida is breaking it down, and what she says will blow your mind. By drawing comparisons to previous NBA MVP arguments, Dida is highlighting the fact that the MVP award is far more subjective than you might imagine and demonstrating the ongoing controversy around the selection of the most important player.
There are so many different ways that you can interpret this MVP award. That's why when I hear media and WNBA analysts saying like, it's unanimous, it's A'ja, if you think any other way, you're just absolutely wrong. Like, I don't think that's actually fair to say, because I think that there's a case to be made for Caitlin, and there's also a case to be made for Nafisa, and there might also be a case to be made for Stewie, simply because the Liberty have been so dominant this season.
This is where things start to become pretty interesting. The WNBA appears to be changing the rules and making it more difficult for players like Clark to receive the recognition they deserve. But wait, there's more. Dida is looking at the bigger picture of player value. Take a look at what she said when you talk about most valuable players. She is questioning whether the criteria used to determine MVP status should be based on individual skills, or is it all about team impact? Both Nafisa and Caitlin Clark for the Aces carries a bit more weight than A'ja does. That's a bold claim, correct? She's implying that certain players carry their teams more than others, and that need to be taken into consideration when choosing an MVP.
And her backcourt mate, Kelsey Mitchell, she's wonderful too. You talk about offense, you're going to get 50-plus points a game out of your backcourt. Pretty impressive.
Let's dissect this. A'ja Wilson is unquestionably a top player, but how do you evaluate her worth in comparison to someone like Clark, who is altering the game for her team on her own? The aces on her team are filled with talent.
So if you have an MVP vote, do you give Caitlin Clark a second place MVP? Okay.
Yes. A'ja Wilson's MVP.
Correct.
But once again, I'm talking about the totality of somebody's value.
The MVP argument becomes complex at this point. Dida contested the notion that A'ja Wilson's selection should be made unanimously, arguing that we should consider the big picture rather than merely the team's performance or statistics.
At Candace Parker's stat line for the 2008 season, she averaged 18.5 points per game. Caitlin is currently averaging more points than that. Candace has more rebounds by a solid amount. But look at these other stats. Caitlin is averaging more assists, more steals, more three-pointers per game, and a higher free throw percentage. Also, Candace Parker is not a point guard, she's a 4. So they're different positions. Caitlin is right there, if not putting up better numbers than Candace did during her rookie season.
This is definitely a snub, but what does it imply for Clark? It suggests that the WNBA may be missing something important. Rather than just dismissing a rookie, they may be neglecting a game-changing player who is revolutionizing what it means to be an asset to a team.
Her value is felt every place she goes, every arena she goes. TV, ratings, value. Now, look, that's not, I guess, fair, with statistical categories, but this is something that to me is larger than the stats that you're going to have.
But what's crazy is that she has the numbers too. You may be wondering if this is fair and if the MVP criteria should be more explicit. These are the questions DeMita is raising, and they're making a lot of people angry because it's not just about Clark anymore. It's about how we value players in women's basketball. Fair or not, the Clark snub is causing a lot of problems for the WNBA, and the future of women's basketball may be in jeopardy.
Stat lines, but the goalpost for Caitlin continues to move. It's like the better she does, the further they move their expectations or what she would need to do to even be, like this article says.
A larger problem in women's basketball is being brought to light by the Caitlin Clark situation. It's not just about one player not receiving an MVP nomination. It's about how the WNBA handles its up-and-coming talent. And let me tell you, it's not looking good. Imagine a situation where a player like Clark is dominating the court and breaking records left and right, and she's still not receiving the credit she deserves. What message does that send? It seems like the WNBA is telling these young stars that no matter how well they play, they won't give them their due.
If Caitlin Clark is not on the ballot, is not in that top 5 for MVP, people are going to lose their mind, because at this point, it would once again just be a hit on her. It would just be keeping her out so that we didn't praise the golden child too much. She should absolutely, if not in the top 3 where I have her, she should absolutely at least be on that ballot.
Now, you may be asking why this matters. Well, the problem is that when the league ignores outstanding performances like Clark's, it harms not only that player but the sport as a whole. How are we supposed to advance women's basketball if we're not honoring our finest and brightest? But wait, it gets even more complicated. The WNBA's current MVP system has several major problems. It appears to be favoring the well-known players from the top teams. But is that really fair? What about the players who are carrying their teams on their shoulders?
After the Olympic break, Caitlin Clark is putting up insane numbers. She's averaging over 25 points since the Olympic break. She has not only become a better player, but she has made her teammates substantially better, and they are now winning games.
Though that is a bold statement, consider this. Are we really going to hold back our rising stars because we are afraid of giving them too much praise? If Caitlin Clark is not on the ballot, it would just be keeping her out so that we didn't praise the golden child too much. This is where Rachel Diaz has a point, even if they aren't at the top of the standings. What's the solution? Since a player might be extremely important even if their team isn't winning the charts, many are calling for a more open and equitable MVP evaluation method that considers individual contributions in addition to team performance.
So when you talk about most valuable, those two to me carry a little bit more weight than A'ja does for the Aces. Asia's out right now with an injury. It doesn't seem like it's too serious, and I hope that she is back soon, especially I hope she's back for the Fever games. But they played the Liberty a couple nights ago, and they were right there. It was a close game until the end. Kelsey Plum stepped up big, and that's what I mean when I say, when we talk about the value to the team, A'ja Wilson is absolutely valuable to that team. However, they have other players who are also so valuable and can take over the game and are leaders and are veterans.
The future of women's basketball, however, is at stake. If we continue to ignore these outstanding performances, we may start to lose young talent and see fewer girls wanting to play basketball as a career, which would be tragic for the sport we all love. This isn't just about Clark or the MVP race, though. The WNBA must take the initiative and demonstrate that they value all of their players, not just the well-known stars. They must demonstrate that talent and hard effort will be rewarded regardless of team or length of time in the league.
One more thing on Caitlin, which makes her super valuable, is she is leading the WNBA in points generated, which means points scored and or points assisted on. She is leading the league by a significant margin, and she is doing this as a rookie with a Fever team that is not comprised of a bunch of all-stars.
Okay, let's dissect this. With everyone raving about Caitlin Clark's MVP snub, Rachel Dida is claiming that the NBA is completely misguided and that she may have a point.
And so that's why maybe the MVP category is just about how you think about it. Do you think about it as the single best, most skilled player in the league, which right now is which right now is Asia Wilson? Give her the crown. That is absolutely hers. Or is it the most valuable and most impactful to the team?
Look, not only is Clark excellent at improving the game, but the WNBA appears to be clinging to its traditions, as Dida calls them out on their fear of praising the golden child too highly.
But I do think that we got to give Caitlin Clark more respect, because at this point, the goalpost keeps getting moved. And if they continue to play like they're playing, the Fever are going to make a run in the playoffs. And that might sound crazy for me to say, but this team is starting to gel.
This is where your opinion counts. Fans have the ability to change things when we speak up, and the leagues pay attention. What do you think? Should the WNBA reconsider how they select their MVP, or are they ignoring the true game changers? Since this is about the future of women's basketball and not just about Clark anymore, please share your thoughts with us.